New gun debate is heating up. The Pittsburgh ACLU now calling for school police officers to go unarmed because guns, they say, send a bad message, a negative message to the kids. John Rafferty is the CEO of WatchGuard 24/7, which helps provide comprehensive security plans to schools, and a retired lieutenant with NYPD. Great to see you, John. Thank you so much for being here. What's your opinion of this? So Pittsburgh, they're saying there was an op-ed in the Pittsburgh newspaper, and school resource officers, they were saying, need to be armed. This guy from the ACLU writes the Pittsburgh newspaper, writes an op-ed saying, absolutely not, that sends a bad message for kids to see officers with guns in the hallways. But here's my question to you. When a madman comes into a school and wants to shoot children, how is a school resource officer supposed to protect the kids?
And they're really not going to have that opportunity. Unfortunately, in this situation in Pittsburgh specifically, because we're talking about law enforcement that they're not supporting to have guns, makes no sense because it is law enforcement. We're not having a debate between unarmed security guards versus armed security guards. These are people that actually can carry firearms and they're not being allowed to. It's more of a decision that the state is making, which, to me, it doesn't make sense because, to have that opportunity and to be able to have that in your budget and not allow it, I think we have to educate and train the teachers, the parents, that when they see somebody with a firearm in school, they shouldn't have this negative orientation that goes along with it. Unfortunately, I think we've had, through the last few years, this negative stigmatism against police officers, and I think that kind of trickles down to that. They're there to protect the kids, and there's other options. I mean, you can have law enforcement in these schools with firearms and not having them exposed. I mean, having somebody wear a sports coat on top of it, you don't have to have that gun exposed.
Right, that's true. You
Absolutely.
don't have to have, the gun can be
Shouldn't
out of
even
sight.
be a debate because, you don't have to have that, that where people even see it. Somebody could be there who's armed and nobody should even know about it.
I know every state is different. You employ a lot of former police officers that are retired, and you put them in schools.
Correct.
It's more expensive to do that than it is to hire someone who doesn't carry a gun, correct?
Correct.
So a lot of, you were telling me in the commercial break, there are a lot of schools here in New York, they can't afford to put a retired police officer in the hallways, and that's why they choose not to do it in New York. It's not really a gun
A lot of
issue.
times it's a budget issue. It's really what the school wants to have some level of security. Sometimes they can't afford to have an armed guard compared to an unarmed guard.
Right.
Sometimes it comes down to their own attorneys, insurance, speaking about their liabilities, what their exposure might be. Sometimes people have this idea.
When it comes to our kids, though, I can't even imagine budget would even be an issue.
You know what it is? It's something where a lot of times through the years, people didn't look at security as something they factored into their budget. So a lot of times it's something new. So,
but in Pittsburgh, they can't afford it because their school resource officers, they employ 57 security aides and 23 police officers. Here's what got me. They all go through the same training as the Pittsburgh City police officers do, and they wear bulletproof vests, which is a clear recognition of the danger that these officers might face. So it's not a budget issue there. It is clearly an issue of they don't want people like the ACLU to come in and say you can't have guns because it sends a bad message.
I think with Pittsburgh specifically, it's more of like a business decision and not the right decision. It's something where they really have to take a look at what they're doing, because something will happen, unfortunately, sooner or later, and that's why you see everybody transitioning to security in these schools. It's just a matter of time. We see a trend going on, throughout different states where there are mass shootings in these schools, and there really is no way to stop it. You just want to minimize the injuries when something like this happens.
Right. Unfortunately, sometimes they have to have a shooting in order to change the laws. That happened in North Carolina. A child, 6-year-old child.
And they put an armed guard in there.
That's
Absolutely.
right. After that child was killed.